Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stepped off his cargo ship onto the pristine docking bay of Celestial Haven. The space station gleamed like a jewel against the purple backdrop of the gas giant Narian. After 3 weeks of dodging pirates and navigating asteroid fields, Jake had finally delivered his cargo of rare crystals to the wealthy trade hub. His cargo ship, the Serenity, looked rough and beaten compared to the sleek luxury vessels parked nearby. Scorch marks from laser fire decorated her hull, and her paint had long since faded from years of hard service. Jake patted her side affectionately before heading toward the station's main corridor. The hallways of Celestial Haven were nothing like the cramped cargo ships Jake was used to. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, and holographic art displays showed peaceful scenes from dozens of different worlds. Alien beings in expensive clothing walked past him, their jewelry sparkling under the soft lights. Jake caught his reflection in a polished wall panel and winced. His pilot's jacket was stained with engine oil, his pants were wrinkled from the long journey, and he needed a shave badly. His brown hair stuck up in odd directions, and his hands were rough and dirty from fixing his ship's systems during the trip. He pulled out his credit pad and checked his balance. The payment for the dangerous cargo run was substantial. For once in his life, Jake had enough money to treat himself to something nice. He had heard about the Metamorphosis Salon from other pilots. They said it was the finest grooming establishment in this sector of space. Jake walked through the station's commercial district, passing shops that sold things he could never afford. Alien merchants hawked exotic foods and rare artifacts to wealthy customers. The air smelled of strange spices and expensive perfumes. The Metamorphosis Salon occupied an entire floor of the station's luxury section. Through its transparent walls, Jake could see elegant beings getting various beauty treatments. The salon's interior was decorated in soft blues and silvers, with floating platforms where customers reclined while skilled beauticians worked on them. A tall, graceful being with pale blue skin and 4 arms stood behind the reception desk. Her name tag read Lyra in several different alien languages. She had the crystalline features of a Zephyrian, one of the most artistic species in the galaxy. Her silver hair flowed like liquid metal, and her clothes looked more expensive than Jake's entire ship. Jake approached the desk and cleared his throat. "Excuse me, I'd like to book a grooming session." Lyra looked up from her holographic schedule, and her large violet eyes immediately scanned Jake from head to toe. Her expression shifted from professional politeness to barely concealed disgust. She took in his worn clothing, stubbled face, and oil-stained hands with obvious disdain. "I see," she said slowly, her voice carrying the musical quality that somehow managed to sound cold. "Perhaps you might be more comfortable at one of the establishments on the lower decks. There are several, more suitable options for working-class individuals." Jake remained polite despite her tone. "I appreciate the suggestion, but I'd prefer to have my service here. I can pay the standard rates." Behind Lyra, Jake could see the main salon area. Wealthy aliens reclined on floating chairs, while Zephyrian stylists worked on them with delicate tools. A group of purple-skinned Valorians discussed business deals while getting their nails done. Near the back, some insect-like Krithan nobles were having their carapaces polished to a mirror shine. "The standard rate for our basic package is 500 credits, Lyra said, clearly expecting Jake to be shocked by the price and leave. Jake pulled out his credit pad without hesitation. "That's fine." Lyra's eyes widened slightly when she saw his account balance, but she quickly composed herself. She tapped her stylus against the desk, clearly reluctant to serve him, but unable to refuse a paying customer. "Very well," she said with a sigh. "I suppose we can accommodate you. However, I must warn you that our other clients expect a certain atmosphere during their visit. I trust you understand the importance of maintaining proper decorum." "Of course," Jake replied simply. Lyra made a few notes on her pad, then called out in her musical language to someone in the back. A young Zephyrian appeared, barely more than a teenager by their species standards. His name tag read Kes, and he looked nervous. "Kes will handle your service," Lyra announced. "He's still learning, so please keep your expectations reasonable." Jake could see the insult for what it was. She was assigning him to the least experienced stylist in the salon. But Jake just nodded and smiled at the young Zephyrian. "Nice to meet you, Kes." "I'm Jake." Kes seemed surprised by Jake's friendly manner. Most clients barely acknowledged the junior staff. "Please follow me, sir." As they walked through the salon, conversations gradually died down. Jake could feel dozens of alien eyes watching him. A wealthy Valorian merchant in an elaborate robe leaned over to his companion and whispered something that made them both laugh. The sound was not kind. An elderly Krithan noble clicked his mandibles in disapproval as Jake passed his treatment station. "The standards here have certainly declined," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Next they'll be letting in cargo haulers and maintenance workers." Jake kept walking, his expression calm and patient. He had heard worse insults during his years as a pilot. Words from strangers meant little to him. Kes led him to a simple chair in a corner of the salon, away from the more prestigious treatment areas. "I apologize for the location," Kes whispered. "This is where they told me to take you." "It's perfect," Jake said, settling into the chair. "Thank you for being kind." The young Zephyrian began preparing his tools, stealing glances at Jake. Unlike the other staff and customers, Kes seemed curious rather than judgmental about their human client. "Have you traveled far?" Kes asked quietly as he began working. "Just finished a cargo run from the outer rim," Jake replied. 3 weeks through some rough space, but the pay was worth it." "That sounds dangerous," Kes said, his 4 hands working skillfully despite his youth. "Sometimes," Jake admitted. "But someone has to deliver supplies to the frontier colonies. They depend on pilots like me to bring them what they need." Around them, the salon's wealthy clientele continued their conversations, occasionally shooting disapproving looks in Jake's direction. But Jake paid them no attention. After years of flying alone through the darkness of space, he had learned to find peace in quiet moments like this. He closed his eyes and let the young stylist work, grateful for a few minutes of rest before his next journey began. Kes worked quietly on Jake's hair, his 4 hands moving with practiced skill despite his youth. The young Zephyrian seemed to be the only person in the salon who treated Jake with basic respect. Around them, the atmosphere grew more hostile. With each passing minute, a tall figure approached their corner station. Master Zane, the head stylist of the Metamorphosis Salon, moved with the fluid grace that all Zephyrians possessed. His crystalline skin shimmered with an inner light that spoke of centuries of experience. Unlike the other staff, his 4 arms were decorated with golden bands that marked his status as a master of his craft. "Kes," Master Zane said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "I need to speak with your client." Jake opened his eyes and looked up at the imposing figure. Master Zane studied him with the same expression someone might use when examining an unpleasant stain on expensive fabric. "Sir," Master Zane began, his tone carefully controlled, "I understand that you have paid for our services, and we honor our commitments. However, I feel it is my duty to inform you that perhaps you might be more comfortable elsewhere." "I'm quite comfortable here, thank you," Jake replied politely. Master Zane's silver eyes narrowed slightly. "Our establishment caters to a very specific clientele. Beings of refinement and culture who appreciate the finer things in life. We have built our reputation over decades by maintaining certain standards." Jake remained calm. "I'm not asking you to lower your standards. I just want a simple grooming session." "The issue is not your payment," Master Zane continued. "It is about atmosphere. Our clients come here to escape the common aspects of daily life. They seek an environment of sophistication and elegance. From across the salon, Lord Vex, a wealthy Valorian merchant, had been listening to the conversation. His purple skin was decorated with expensive tattoos that showed his noble status, and his robes were made from silk that cost more than most beings earned in a year. "Exactly right, Master Zane," Lord Vex called out loudly. "I did not pay premium prices to be reminded of common laborers. The smell of engine oil and sweat is hardly conducive to relaxation." Other clients began to voice their agreement. A group of Krithan nobles clicked their mandibles in approval. The insect-like beings had paid enormous sums to have their carapaces polished, and they clearly felt that Jake's presence diminished their experience. Perhaps the humans should consider a nice scrub down at one of the cargo bay wash stations. One of the Krethans suggested, causing laughter to ripple through the salon. Jake felt Kessa's hands pause in their work. The young Zephyrian was clearly uncomfortable with the way his client was being treated, but he was too junior to speak up against the established hierarchy of the salon. "I understand your concerns," Jake said quietly, addressing Master Zane. "But I've paid for a service, and I'd like to receive it. I promise I won't disturb anyone." Master Zane's expression grew more stern. "Young man, you must understand that this is not about money. This is about maintaining the proper order of things. There are places for everyone in civilized society. This particular establishment serves those who have earned their place through achievement, refinement, and social standing." "And what makes you think I haven't earned my place?" Jake asked, his voice still calm but with a hint of steel underneath. "Lord." Vex laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the salon. "Earned your place?" "By hauling cargo through space like a common delivery boy. Please, you reek of desperation and hard labor. You probably saved for months just to afford one session here." "The Valorian is correct," added an elderly Krithan, female whose carapace gleamed with fresh polish. "Humans are known for their aspirations, beyond their station. It's quite amusing, really. A species barely out of their home system, thinking they belong among their betters." Jake's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained level. "I see. And what exactly makes someone worthy of respect in your opinion?" "Breeding," Lord Vex declared. "Culture, sophistication, the ability to appreciate beauty and refinement. Things that take generations to develop, not something you can buy with a few credits earned from manual labor." Master Zane nodded in agreement. "The Valorian speaks wisdom. True class cannot be purchased or imitated. It must be inherited and cultivated over time." A neither, one of the floating gas beings from the outer spiral, drifted closer to join the conversation. Its voice was like wind through crystal chimes. "The human species is barely evolved beyond their primitive roots. They still solve problems with violence and crude technology. How can such beings understand the subtle arts of beauty and grace?" "Exactly," agreed another Krithan. "Humans are useful for carrying cargo and doing dangerous work that more civilized beings won't do. But they should know their place in the galaxy's natural order." Jake looked around the salon at all the faces staring at him with various degrees of disdain, amusement, and outright hostility. Kess had stopped working entirely, his young face showing embarrassment at his colleague's behavior. "I understand your position," Jake said finally. "You believe that some beings are naturally superior to others based on their species, their wealth, or their social status." "It's not a belief," Lord Vex said condescendingly. "It's simply reality. The natural order of the universe. Some beings are meant to lead, to create beauty, to appreciate the finer things in life. Others are meant to serve those purposes through their labor." "And you think humans fall into the second category?" Jake asked. "Obviously," Master Zane replied. "Don't misunderstand us. There's nothing wrong with honest work. The galaxy needs cargo pilots and laborers. But there's a difference between necessary work and meaningful contribution to civilization." Jake was quiet for a long moment, processing what he had heard. Around him, The alien clients seemed satisfied that they had put the presumptuous human in his place. Some had already returned to their conversations, dismissing him as a minor annoyance that had been properly handled. "Well," Jake said softly, "I suppose everyone is entitled to their opinion." He looked at Kes, who was standing frozen with his styling tools in his hands. The young Zephyrian's violet eyes showed a mixture of shame and confusion. Unlike the others, he seemed genuinely troubled by the treatment Jake was receiving. "Don't worry about it, Kes," Jake said gently. "This isn't your fault." Master Zane seemed pleased that Jake was finally accepting his place. "I'm glad you understand. Perhaps next time you'll choose an establishment more suited to your circumstances." Jake nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. The salon had returned to its normal rhythm, with wealthy clients discussing their various concerns, while skilled beauticians attended to their needs. The brief disruption caused by the human's presence was already being forgotten, but something in Jake's calm acceptance seemed different from defeat. His gray eyes held a depth that none of the salon's clients bothered to notice. He sat quietly in his corner chair, enduring their judgment with a patience that spoke of inner strength rather than submission. The aliens around him had made their opinions clear. Now they would discover just how wrong they had been about humans, and about Jake Morrison in particular. The soft music playing throughout the Metamorphosis salon was suddenly interrupted by a harsh beeping sound. Emergency alert signals began flashing on every screen and display panel in the establishment. The gentle lighting shifted to an urgent red glow that made everyone look up from their treatments. Lyra, at the reception desk, quickly activated the main communication screen. The holographic display expanded to show a news anchor from the Galactic Broadcasting Network. The anchor was a composed Altarian with silver skin, but even her professional demeanor could not hide the fear in her large black eyes. "We interrupt regular programming with breaking news from the Harmony World sector," the anchor announced. "Multiple sources confirm that the Skarn Armada has launched a massive surprise attack on the peaceful colonies in that region." A collective gasp went through the salon. Even the wealthy clients who moments before had been mocking Jake now turned their full attention to the screens. The Skarn were known throughout the galaxy as ruthless destroyers. They traveled in massive fleets, wiping out entire civilizations and taking no prisoners. The screen showed footage from the attack. Enormous black ships filled the space around beautiful garden worlds. Laser fire rained down from orbit, turning cities into burning ruins. Civilian ships trying to evacuate were destroyed without mercy. The Skarn fleet was like a plague of locusts, consuming everything in their path. "The initial assault began 3 hours ago," the anchor continued. "Defense forces in the region were caught completely off guard. Early reports suggest that at least 12 worlds are under direct attack, with a combined population of over 8 billion beings." Lord Vex, the Valorian merchant, stood up abruptly from his treatment chair. His purple face had gone pale with shock. "My family has mining operations in the Harmony worlds," he said to no one in particular. 3 generations of work, thousands of employees. Master Zane moved quickly to calm his wealthy client. "I'm sure your people will be safe, Lord Vex. The Galactic Defense Coalition will respond quickly." But the news anchor's next words destroyed that hope. "Coalition forces are scrambling to respond, but intelligence reports indicate the Skarn fleet numbers in the thousands. This appears to be the largest military operation in their species' history." The screen now showed tactical displays of the battle. Red markers representing Skarn ships covered entire star systems. Blue markers showing coalition defenders were pathetically few in comparison. It was clear that this was not just a raid or a limited attack. This was an attempt at complete genocide. "The Skarn have deployed their full battle fleet," a military expert appeared on screen to explain. "We haven't seen numbers like this since the Great War 50 years ago." Their flagship alone is larger than most space stations. A Krithan noble, near the back of the salon, began clicking his mandibles nervously. "I have investments throughout that sector," he muttered. "If the Skarn take those worlds, the economic impact will reach every corner of the galaxy." The news continued with more devastating reports. Refugee ships packed with survivors were fleeing the attacked worlds, but many were being hunted down and destroyed by Skarn patrol groups. Communication arrays were being systematically destroyed, cutting off calls for help from the surface. "The situation appears hopeless," the anchor reported. "Coalition military leaders are calling this the worst crisis since the formation of the galactic government. Without immediate intervention, billions of innocent beings will be lost." Jake sat quietly in his corner chair, watching the screens with an expression that was hard to read, while the alien clients around him showed obvious fear and panic. He remained calm. His gray eyes studied the tactical displays with the focus of someone who understood military strategy. Kess, the young Zephyrian stylist, had stopped working completely. His four hands trembled as he watched the destruction on the screens. "So many people," he whispered. "How can anyone be so cruel?" "The Skarn don't see it as cruelty," Jake said quietly. "To them, it's just efficient resource acquisition. They destroy civilizations and take their worlds. It's what they've always done." Several nearby clients turned to stare at Jake. It was unusual for someone of his apparent low status to speak with such authority about military matters. And how would a cargo pilot know about Skarn tactics? Master Zane asked with obvious skepticism. Jake shrugged. "You pick things up when you fly the frontier routes. Pirates, raiders, military patrols. You learn to recognize different ship types and fighting styles if you want to stay alive." The news anchor's voice drew their attention back to the screens. "We're now receiving reports that the Skarn have deployed their elite terror squadrons. These specialized units are known for their ability to break through any defense and eliminate high-value targets." Lord Vex sank back into his chair, his face now showing genuine terror. "Terror squadrons," he repeated. "They're the ones who destroyed the Kepler colonies. No one survives when they arrive." An elderly nether floating near the ceiling began to emit distressed sounds like wind through broken glass. "My daughter's research station is in that sector," the gas being wailed. "She was studying peaceful migration patterns of space whales. She's never hurt anyone in her life." The salon's atmosphere had completely changed. Minutes before, these wealthy beings had been relaxing in luxury, concerned only with their appearance and social status. Now they faced the reality that their money and position meant nothing against the Skarn war machine. "Coalition Command is asking for volunteers," the news anchor announced. "Any ship capable of combat operations is being requested to join the Defense Fleet." However, military experts warn that this appears to be a suicide mission. The Skarn fleet is simply too large and well-armed. Jake's hands, which had been resting calmly on the arms of his chair, slowly clenched into fists. For the first time since entering the salon, his controlled expression showed a hint of emotion. Something dark and determined flickered in his eyes. The screen now showed Admiral Kate Bishop, the highest-ranking officer in the Galactic Defense Coalition. She was a stern human woman with gray hair and the bearing of someone who had seen too many battles. Her uniform was covered with medals and commendations from dozens of different worlds. "The situation is critical," Admiral Bishop announced. "We need every available ship and pilot. The Skarn must be stopped before they complete their advance. If they succeed in the Harmony worlds, no civilization in this galaxy will be safe." The alien clients in the salon looked at each other with growing panic. They were wealthy and influential, but none of them were warriors. Their ships were designed for comfort and status, not combat. They could offer money, but money was useless against the Skarn killing machine. Jake stood up slowly from his chair. Kess looked up at him with surprise. his styling tool still in his hands. "Thank you for the service, Kes," Jake said gently. "You did good work." The young Zephyrian blinked in confusion. "But sir, we're not finished yet." Jake smiled at him, the first genuine smile he had shown since entering the salon. "I think we are." He walked toward the exit, moving with purpose. For the first time since his arrival, the wealthy aliens barely noticed him leaving. They were too focused on their own fears and the disaster unfolding on the screens. But Jake Morrison was no longer just a humble cargo pilot being ignored by his betters. He was a man with a mission, and the galaxy was about to discover exactly what that meant. Jake had almost reached the salon's exit when the emergency broadcast system crackled to life again. This time, the transmission was coming directly from Coalition Command Headquarters. Admiral Kate Bishop's face appeared on every screen throughout. "Celestial Haven Station," her expression grave and determined. "Citizens of the galaxy," Admiral Bishop began, her voice carrying the weight of command across countless star systems. "The situation in the Harmony worlds has reached a critical point. The Skarn fleet has broken through our initial defense lines and is advancing toward the core populated worlds." Jake paused at the doorway, his hand resting on the frame. Behind him, the salon had fallen completely silent. Even the soft background music had been automatically shut off to ensure everyone could hear the Admiral's words clearly. "We have received volunteer offers from hundreds of brave pilots throughout the sector," Admiral Bishop continued. "However, this mission requires more than courage. It requires someone with intimate knowledge of Skarn ship design, their tactical patterns, and their weaknesses." Lord Vex leaned forward in his chair, his purple face showing desperate hope. "Surely the Coalition has military experts who know how to fight the Skarn." Master Zane shook his head grimly. "The last major conflict with the Skarn ended 50 years ago. Most of the veterans from that war are dead or retired. Their knowledge died with them." On the screen, Admiral Bishop's expression grew even more serious. "After reviewing our options, Coalition Command has approved a desperate plan. We will attempt to strike at the heart of the Skarn fleet by targeting their command flagship. If we can destroy their central coordination, we may be able to break their attack formation." A young Krithan noble near the back of the salon clicked his mandibles nervously. "But surely no single ship could penetrate their defenses? The Skarn flagship is surrounded by hundreds of escort vessels. The mission requires a pilot willing to take a small, fast ship loaded with experimental quantum charges directly into the enemy formation," Admiral Bishop explained. "The pilot would need to evade their defenses, penetrate their shields, and detonate the charges inside their command ship." The implications were clear to everyone listening. It was a suicide mission. No pilot could be expected to survive such an attack, even if they succeeded in destroying the target. "We cannot order anyone to undertake this mission," Admiral Bishop continued. "It must be a volunteer action. Someone willing to sacrifice their life for the hope of saving billions of others." Jake's shoulders tensed slightly, but he remained facing the exit. The alien clients behind him were absorbed in the broadcast, their earlier mockery forgotten in the face of galactic catastrophe. "However," Admiral Bishop said, "we have received an offer from a volunteer pilot. Someone with the necessary experience and skills to have a chance at success." Lyra at the reception desk gasped. Someone actually volunteered for a suicide mission. Who would do such a thing? "The volunteer," Admiral Bishop announced, "is a veteran of the human-Skarn border wars. Someone who has faced Skarn vessels in combat and survived. Someone who understands their technology and tactics better than any other pilot currently available." Jake turned slowly to face the salon's interior. His calm gray eyes swept across the faces of the aliens who had spent the last hour insulting him and his species. For the first time, some of them were beginning to look at him with something other than disdain. "The pilot volunteering for this mission," Admiral Bishop continued, "has an impressive combat record. During the Battle of Kepler Station, he single-handedly destroyed 3 Skarn destroyers while protecting civilian evacuation ships. His actions saved over 50,000 lives. Master Zane's crystalline features went pale. A terrible understanding was beginning to dawn on the salon's staff and clients. They looked at Jake with new eyes, seeing not the humble cargo pilot they had dismissed, but something far more significant. "The volunteer pilot," Admiral Bishop said, "is Captain Jake Morrison, currently stationed aboard the cargo vessel Serenity. Captain Morrison has agreed to modify his ship with the quantum charges and attempt to reach the Skarn flagship." The salon erupted in shocked silence. Every being present turned to stare at Jake, who stood calmly by the exit. The man they had mocked as a common laborer was actually a war hero willing to die to save worlds full of people who had treated him with contempt. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Bishop's voice continued from the screens, "is known throughout the coalition military as one of our finest pilots. He has turned down numerous promotions and honors, preferring to serve as a civilian cargo pilot in the frontier regions." Lord Vex stood up from his chair, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. The Valorian merchant who had laughed at Jake's appearance now realized he had been insulting a legendary military hero. "But there's more," Admiral Bishop said. "Captain Morrison's service record includes classified missions behind enemy lines. He has destroyed more Skarn vessels than any other pilot in Coalition history. His tactical knowledge of their fleet formations and ship designs is unmatched." Kess, the young Zephyrian stylist, looked at Jake with wide violet eyes. You're really him? The pilot from the Kepler Station battle?" Jake nodded quietly. "Yes, the Skarn have a special name for Captain Morrison," Admiral Bishop continued. "They call him the Ghost of Kepler because of his ability to appear and disappear in battle, striking their ships before they can respond." A Krithan noble near the back of the salon began clicking his mandibles in what sounded like panic. "The Ghost of Kepler? But that's a legend. Skarn commanders tell stories about him to frighten their subordinates." "The stories are true," Admiral Bishop confirmed. "Captain Morrison has agreed to undertake this mission not for glory or recognition, but because he believes it's the right thing to do. He has asked for no reward beyond the opportunity to serve." Jake walked back toward his chair where Kess was still standing with his styling tools. The young Zephyrian's hands were shaking as he realized he had been working on one of the galaxy's greatest war heroes. "If I don't make it back," Jake said gently to Kess, "I want you to know that you were the only person in this place who treated me with kindness. That means more to me than any medal or commendation." Tears began forming in Kess's crystalline eyes. "Sir, I didn't know." "You didn't need to know," Jake replied. "You were kind because it's who you are, not because of who I am. That's what makes you special." Admiral Bishop's voice drew their attention back to the screens. "Captain Morrison's ship will launch in 30 minutes. We ask all citizens to remember his sacrifice and the sacrifice of all who serve to protect our way of life." Jake moved toward the exit again, but this time his path was blocked. Master Zane stood before him, his 4 arms spread wide in a gesture of respect that his species reserved for only the most honored individuals. "Captain Morrison," Master Zane said, his voice barely above a whisper, we didn't know. Please forgive us." Jake looked at the head stylist with the same calm expression he had maintained throughout his ordeal. "There's nothing to forgive," he said simply. "You treated me based on what you thought you knew. Now you know better." He stepped around Master Zane and walked toward the door. Behind him, the salon's wealthy clients sat in stunned silence, finally understanding the magnitude of their mistake. They had judged a hero by his appearance and found themselves completely wrong. The news broadcast continued as Jake reached the salon's exit. Admiral Bishop's voice filled the stunned silence with more details about the man who had just walked among them unrecognized. Captain Morrison's military record is classified at the highest levels, Admiral Bishop announced. However, I can share that he has been awarded the Stellar Cross for Valor, the Coalition Medal of Honor, and the Galactic Peace Prize. He has consistently refused promotion to admiral rank, stating that he prefers to serve where he can make the most direct difference. Lord Vex slowly sank back into his treatment chair, his purple face now completely drained of color. The Valorian merchant who had laughed about humans being delivery boys was learning that he had insulted one of the most decorated heroes in galactic history. During the siege of New Terra, Admiral Bishop continued, Captain Morrison flew solo missions behind enemy lines for 6 months. He disrupted Skarn supply lines, rescued captured civilians, and gathered intelligence that led to the enemy's eventual defeat. Master Zane's 4 hands were trembling as he processed what he was hearing. The crystalline being who had suggested Jake find a more suitable establishment now understood that he had tried to turn away someone who had saved countless lives. But perhaps most remarkably, Admiral Bishop said, Captain Morrison has never sought recognition for his service. After the war ended, he quietly returned to civilian life as a cargo pilot. He has used his earnings to fund medical supplies for frontier colonies and disaster relief efforts throughout the galaxy. A young Krithan noble near the window made a soft clicking sound of distress. He's been helping people this entire time, while flying cargo runs? The captain's ship, the Serenity, has been modified far beyond standard cargo specifications, Admiral Bishop explained. It carries advanced medical equipment, emergency supplies, and defensive systems. Many frontier colonies owe their survival to Captain Morrison's regular supply runs through dangerous space. Jake had paused just outside the salon's entrance. Through the transparent walls, the alien clients could see him standing in the corridor, checking something on his personal communication device. He looked exactly the same as when he had entered, a tired pilot in worn clothing. But now they saw him with completely different eyes. The Harmony World's crisis requires someone with Captain Morrison's unique qualifications, Admiral Bishop continued. He has studied Skarn ship designs for decades. He knows their weapons systems, their shield frequencies, and their tactical weaknesses better than anyone alive. Layra, the receptionist who had tried to turn Jake away, was staring at her computer screen in shock. She had pulled up Jake's credit account and was reading information she had ignored before. His payment history showed regular donations to orphanages, medical facilities, and refugee assistance programs across dozens of star systems. Captain Morrison has requested no special equipment or support for this mission, Admiral Bishop said. He will use his own ship, his own resources, and his own expertise. He has asked only that if he doesn't return, his ship's cargo of medical supplies be delivered to the Children's Hospital on Kepler Station. Kess, the young Zephyrian stylist, was crying openly now. The crystalline tears rolled down his pale blue cheeks as he realized what kind of man he had been serving. Jake had been gentle and patient with him, even while being insulted by everyone else in the salon. The captain's tactical plan is elegant in its simplicity, Admiral Bishop explained. He will approach the Skarn flagship disguised as a damaged cargo vessel. His ship's modifications will be hidden until the last moment. If successful, the quantum charges will destroy the flagship's command center and disrupt their entire fleet coordination. An elderly nether floating near the ceiling began emitting the gas being equivalent of sobbing. Her daughter's research station was in the path of the Skarn advance, and now she understood that a human she had dismissed as primitive was volunteering to die to save her child. Captain Morrison has declined all offers of escort or support, Admiral Bishop continued. He believes that additional ships would only alert the Skarn to the true nature of his mission. He will go alone, as he has done so many times before. Jake finished checking his device and looked back through the salon's transparent wall. His gray eyes met those of the beings who had spent an hour telling him he didn't belong among civilized company. There was no anger in his expression, no bitterness or resentment, only a quiet sadness that spoke of disappointment in what he had witnessed. The probability of mission success is estimated at less than 10%, Admiral Bishop announced. The probability of Captain Morrison's survival is effectively zero. Yet he has volunteered without hesitation, stating that even a small chance of saving billions of lives justifies the risk. Master Zane suddenly rushed toward the salon's exit, his 4 arms waving frantically. "Captain Morrison, please wait." But Jake had already turned and was walking away down the corridor. His steady pace showed no urgency, no heroic posturing. He moved like a man going to work, which in many ways was exactly what he was doing. Captain Morrison's sacrifice represents the finest traditions of the human species, Admiral Bishop said. Throughout their history, humans have shown a willingness to risk everything for others, even for those who have shown them no kindness in return. Lord Vex stood up and stumbled toward the exit, his expensive robes trailing behind him. "I have to apologize," he said desperately. "I have to tell him I was wrong." But by the time the Valorian merchant reached the corridor, Jake was already gone. The man they had mocked and dismissed had disappeared into the station's crowds, heading toward what would almost certainly be his death. "The mission will commence in 15 minutes, Admiral Bishop announced. "We ask all citizens to observe a moment of silence for Captain Morrison and all those who serve in defense of peace and freedom." The Metamorphosis Salon fell completely quiet. The wealthy beings who had come there to pamper themselves and display their status now sat in stunned contemplation of their own behavior. They had encountered true greatness and had failed to recognize it. Worse, they had actively insulted and dismissed it. Kess was still standing where Jake had left him, holding his styling tools in his 4 shaking hands. The young Zephyrian who had shown the only kindness to Jake now understood that he had been the only one in the salon to treat a hero with basic respect. "I should have defended him," Kess whispered to himself. "I should have said something when they were being cruel, but it was too late for regrets." Jake Morrison was already preparing for his final mission, carrying with him the knowledge that the beings he was about to die for had judged him unworthy of basic courtesy. Yet he would go anyway, because that was what humans did. They served, they sacrificed, and they protected others, regardless of how they were treated in return. The silence in the salon was the sound of shame, regret, and the terrible realization that they had encountered greatness and had completely failed to recognize it. Jake walked through the corridors of Celestial Haven with the same steady pace he had maintained throughout his ordeal at the salon. Station personnel and visitors moved past him without a second glance, unaware that they were seeing a living legend heading toward what might be his final mission. Behind him, in the Metamorphosis Salon, the wealthy alien clients sat in stunned silence as Admiral Bishop's broadcast continued. The full scope of Jake's heroism was still being revealed, painting a picture of a man who had spent decades quietly serving others without seeking recognition or reward. Captain Morrison's personal sacrifice extends beyond his military service, Admiral Bishop announced. Intelligence reports indicate that he has used his own resources to fund medical clinics on 12 different frontier worlds. He has personally rescued over 300 civilians from various disasters throughout his career. Lord Vex had his purple head in his hands, overwhelmed by shame. The Valorian merchant who had mocked Jake for being a delivery boy now understood that those cargo runs had been missions of mercy to help beings in need. Jake reached the docking bay where his ship waited. The Serenity looked exactly as she had when he arrived, worn, practical, and unremarkable. But the dock workers who had been loading and unloading cargo all day now stopped their work to stare. Word was spreading quickly through the station about the identity of the humble pilot. A young human dock worker approached Jake cautiously. Captain Morrison, sir? Is it really you? Jake turned to the young man with a gentle smile. Just Jake is fine. What's your name? Tony, sir. Tony Chun. I heard about your mission. I wanted to thank you. My family lives in the Harmony Worlds. Jake placed a hand on Tony's shoulder. Take care of yourself, Tony, and tell your family that help is coming. Back in the salon, the news broadcast was showing footage from Jake's previous battles. The screens displayed impossible flying maneuvers, ships darting through enemy fire with precision that seemed almost supernatural. The beings who had dismissed human abilities as primitive now watched in awe as Jake's past victories played out before them. The Skarn High Command has placed the largest bounty in their history on Captain Morrison, Admiral Bishop revealed. They consider him their most dangerous enemy. Yet he has chosen to face them once again, knowing they will throw everything they have at stopping him. Master Zane was pacing back and forth in the salon, his forearms gesturing wildly as he processed his emotions. We have to do something, he said desperately. We can't just let him go without apologizing. It's too late, Lyra said quietly from her reception desk. He's probably already launched. But Jake was still in the docking bay, making final preparations for his mission. He was checking the quantum charges that had been loaded into his cargo hold, ensuring that every connection was secure. The explosive devices were powerful enough to destroy a space station, let alone a single ship. A small crowd had gathered to watch him work. Station personnel, dock workers, and even some of the wealthy passengers had come down from the upper levels. Word of the famous pilot's presence had spread throughout Celestial Haven. Among the crowd, Jake spotted a familiar face. Kess the Young, Zephyrian stylist, had left the salon and made his way to the docking bay. The four-armed being was carrying a small package wrapped in silver cloth. Captain Morrison, Kess called out, his voice trembling with emotion. Jake turned from his ship and walked over to the young alien. What are you doing here, Kess? Shouldn't you be working? I brought you something, Kess said, offering the package with all four hands. It's not much, but I wanted you to have it. Jake unwrapped the silver cloth to reveal a small grooming kit, beautifully crafted with tools that gleamed like jewels. It was clearly expensive, probably worth several months of Kess's salary. I can't accept this, Jake said gently. This is too valuable. Please, Kess insisted, tears flowing down his crystalline cheeks. You were the only client who ever treated me with respect. You didn't know who I was, but you were kind to me. Anyway, I want you to have something to remember that not everyone in the galaxy judges others by their appearance. Jake looked at the grooming kit for a long moment, then carefully rewrapped it in the silver cloth. Thank you, Kess. This means more to me than you'll ever know. The broadcast screens throughout the docking bay crackled to life with a new announcement. Admiral Bishop appeared again, her expression grave but determined. Captain Morrison has confirmed his readiness for launch, she announced. All coalition forces have been ordered to clear the flight path to the Harmony Worlds. The captain will proceed alone, as requested. Jake tucked Kess's gift into his jacket pocket and turned toward his ship. But before he could board, more familiar faces appeared in the crowd. Master Zane, Lord Vex, and several other clients from the salon had made their way to the docking bay. Captain Morrison, Master Zane called out, his crystalline features showing deep shame. Please, we must speak with you. Jake paused at his ship's entrance ramp. What can I do for you? Lord Vex stepped forward, his purple skin darker than usual with embarrassment. We came to apologize. Our behavior was inexcusable. We judged you based on ignorance and prejudice. We were wrong about everything, Master Zane added. About humans, about you, about what makes someone worthy of respect. Jake looked at the group of wealthy aliens who had spent an hour insulting him and his species. His expression remained calm and patient, showing no trace of anger or resentment. I appreciate your words, Jake said simply. But I don't need your apology. I hope this experience teaches you to treat others with kindness, regardless of who you think they are. How can you forgive us so easily? Asked a Krithan noble who had mocked human evolution. Because holding anger would only hurt me, Jake replied, and I have work to do. Admiral Bishop's voice echoed through the docking bay speakers. Captain Morrison, you are cleared for launch. Coalition Command and the entire galaxy wish you success. Jake walked up the ramp of his ship, pausing, only to wave goodbye to Kess and the crowd that had gathered. The Serenity's engines began to warm up, filling the docking bay with a low humming sound. 6 hours later, news of Jake's success reached Celestial Haven. Not only had he destroyed the Skarn flagship, but he had somehow managed to escape the explosion and was returning home. The impossible mission had succeeded, and the hero had survived. When Jake's ship docked at the station 3 days later, thousands of beings were waiting to welcome him. The entire population of Celestial Haven had turned out to honor the pilot who had saved the Harmony worlds, but Jake simply nodded politely to the crowd, collected his payment for the medical supplies he had delivered, and asked if anyone needed cargo transported to the frontier. Because that's what humans did. They served others quietly, without seeking glory or recognition, making the galaxy a better place one small act of kindness at a time. The aliens who had once dismissed him as primitive now understood a fundamental truth about humanity. True strength wasn't measured by wealth, status, or species. It was measured by character, sacrifice, and the willingness to do what was right, even when no one was watching.